Welcome to your college-bound kid,
a podcast for parents, college counselors, students, and anyone who wants a weekly deep dive into the world of college admissions.
Hi, I'm Susan, and I'm a college counselor and have read applications for a small liberal arts college and 2 research universities. My twins are recent college graduates.
I'm Lisa, and I'm a clinical psychologist and college counselor. I have a daughter in college, a daughter in high school, and a son in middle school. After 30 years in Chicago, we recently moved to North Carolina.
My name is Mark. I'm a college coach in Atlanta and the parent of 2 daughters. Karis, a graduate of Davidson College, and she is the founder of the Spanish tutoring company, SpanishHelpToday.com. And Joy is a graduate of the University of Georgia, and she is getting her master's degree at North Carolina State University. Good morning, friends. Very excited again today as I come before you. For some reason, I'm really caffeinated or jacked up today. Partly it may be we start a new interview that I think you guys are going to like a lot about a school there's a lot of interest in. But there's just a lot of reasons I'm fired up today. Some of them personal, some of them podcast related. As you guys know, I'm getting into gardening and the flowers are just popping. There's all kinds of colors in our backyard. So really having a lot of fun with that. So all is good. But before we get into our preview of our new interview, quite a few announcements today. And the first one I want to mention is there's still 16 interviews with VPs of enrollments and senior level people, deans, directors that you have that are committed, that you have an opportunity to send questions in for. And so it's been a while, a month or so, since I have announced who those interviews are with. And I want to just say it so that you could send your questions in, because we love taking questions from you and directing them to our esteemed guests. And I just want to make it clear the best way to do that is by using our Twitter feed. Just go to @YCBK podcast and then just message me directly. They stay there like a vault, whereas with emails, they get lost in hundreds of emails. They just do. So I'm really going to ask if you could send your questions directly that way. If you don't have Twitter, you can still use questions at yourcollegeboundkid.com, but I have just a very strong preference for sending the questions to the @YCBK podcast message direct link. All right, here are the ones that you can still send questions in for. Mackie Siebens at Bard College, Kelly Holloway at Mercer, Tamara Siler at Rice. I just have to say something about Tamara. She's a graduate from Rice, and Susan and I, when we ran this big, huge, almost national college fair, we used to bring her in as a key person for us. This is like back in 2005, 2007. So she's been at Rice. This is her 31st year. So that's going to be a great one. Tamara Siler at Rice. Andrea Felder at American University. Really excited. I wanted to spotlight on American for a long time. Yvonne Berumen from Pitzer. We had a great planning meeting. Another person I had a great planning meeting with, Marcela Meija-Martinez at Chapman University. These are all ones that you still have time to send questions in for. Andy Strickler, Connecticut College. Very excited about this. Anthony Berry, Trinity College. Back-to-back Connecticut colleges there. College of the Atlantic. What a unique school. Heather Albert. And then Chelsea Holley right here, Spelman College. What an incredible school, and so excited that Chelsea agreed. Victoria Romero at Scripps. That was my daughter's second choice, by the way, after Davidson. So she had 2 visits there that were fantastic. Daniel Wood, St. Louis University. That's going to be a really unique interview. That's going to be all about transfer admissions. He's the transfer counselor. Anything you want to know about transferring, send our way for us to ask on that interview. Then we've got Randy Arsenal at Colby College, a school that most of the time when people visit Colby, they're like, wow, this place is spectacular. And then another school that my daughter's a graduate of, the University of Georgia. We've got David Graves is over that whole operation. That one's going to be later on, but still in 2023, but toward the end of 2022, but toward the end of the year. And then I was so happy that Ronnie Turner from WashU agreed to do the interview. I think for a lot of reasons. One, that's just kind of a very special school for me in a lot of ways. But also, before she committed, she said that I'm going to go listen to several of your interviews. She really did her homework. And then she came back and said, I'm in. Let's do it. So those are the interviews that you can still submit questions for. And we hope to hear from you. I certainly have no problem coming up with questions. Neither do the rest of our staff. But we'd love to be able to include our listeners. Second announcement, very excited to mention that Marichal Gentry, he loved doing the podcast. So much so to the fact that he said, anytime you want me to come back. And guess what? We're going to take him up on that because the response we got is great. And I want to do this one a little differently. So this time I want to have you send in your questions and send them just directly to Lisa. So I'm going to give you Lisa's email. It's just Lisa@school, SCHOOL, match, MATCH, number 4u.com. Lisa@school, match, number 4u.com. Send them directly to her. Lisa will be conducting the interview again. She sees Marichal on a fairly regular basis with her kids being at the same school that he works at. And so it's just easy for her to get it and talk with him. Now, you may want to follow up on some of the things he's already addressed. And by the way, if you never heard episode 246 and 248, got to go back and hear that. He addressed all kinds of challenges students can face in college, having had a couple decades in a role of either being a dean of students, actively involved in student life leadership at Middlebury, Sewanee, and Yale. So he pulls from multiple experiences, multiple roles, multiple colleges, South and the North. Some of the things, if you didn't hear it, that he addressed, you could send up follow-up questions on FERPA. He talked about FERPA. He talked about separating from your kid, time management, handling alcohol, talking to your child about drugs, including prescription drugs, cannabis, consent for physical contact, Violence Against Women Act, so many things, unhealthy eating habits, sleeping habits, importance of staying active, using a counseling center, peer health workshops, and then unexpected changes in appearance, tongue piercings, tattoos, scraggly beards, and then students making unexpected proclamations like, I'm gay, or please address me by this pronoun, or I'm an atheist, or I'm a born-again Christian, or guess what? I don't want to be pre-med anymore. I want to do art history. Those are some of the things he addressed. You can send in questions as follow-ups on any of those, or really you can just send in anything related to success in college. This is just part of a whole new emphasis that we want to have, where we want to do more content on success in college, not just admissions to college. It's not going to be 50-50, but if 31% of our listeners, and that's what our surveys show, have somebody in college, then we don't want to lose you. There have been times in the past where we had the most devout listeners, and then when they got their kid in college, they would be like, well, it was a great run, but we don't need you anymore. See ya. And we want to be able to keep those listeners by still meeting their needs. So please send those questions directly to Lisa@schoolmatchforyou.com. We're looking at January, February for him to come back and do a part 2. Okay, friends, this is episode 250. That's a milestone episode for us. That's halfway to 500. That's a quarter of the way to 1,000. And by the way, I plan on keep on trucking and hitting those numbers. And very few podcasts hit that number. And so I am going to ask you for your support. And you can support us in one of a few ways. We certainly do need financial support. It's a pretty big undertaking for us to add a second episode. So it adds about $5,000 to our annual budget. Most of that is the sound engineer expense and the webmaster. But there's several other expenses that we have on a weekly basis. And if you could make a contribution, if you want to, we do not want anybody to give who doesn't want to give. If this feels like, oh my goodness, you're asking me to pay a bill, and some people feel that way. Some people feel like contributing to a podcast is like paying for water at a restaurant. It's just supposed to be free. And that's perfectly fine. If that's how you feel, then, don't support us. But if you appreciate the fact that we're delivering 10 to 12 hours a month of commercial-free content, knowing we do have some considerable expenses, and you would get joy in giving, we really could use your support now. We have 28 monthly donors, and they're our backbone. We would never have expanded without them because they allow us to know that we have a budget to do certain things. And then we have sporadic givers who give either one time or every time they feel led. Everyone is so helpful. So if you feel inclined on episode 250 to make a contribution, we would be most grateful. And you could just go to your collegeboundkid.com and you'll see a donate button. But if giving's not your thing, there are a couple other ways you could really help us. One would be to go into your social media feed and share the podcast. That helps tremendously as well. And the third thing would be to write a review. And so you just want to do that on Spotify or Apple and just write a review. It's another way of reaching more listeners. And if someone wants to do multiple things off that list, we'll take it. I don't like to talk about money that often, but we are running 10 to 12 hours a month of commercial-free content, and there are expenses there. And every now and then, there's a person who loves to give, and that's the person who we would want to contribute to help us out. Okay, next announcement. So our regular listeners who never miss an episode, you will know this. Probably about a year and a half ago, we said that we wanted to pull together some students who are on a college campus and do webinar style. Now, our regular listeners know that we did this a few times. We did webinar style sessions where we just had a sign-up sheet, sent you a link. We did a session with Lisa Prescott, Director of Admission, Undergraduate Admission at University of California, Santa Barbara. We did one with Sam Prouty, Director of Admission at Middlebury College. And we did one with Gil Villanueva, who was the Director of Admission at Richmond and has since moved on to Rhodes College. So we've done them in the past. They've been great. And we've wanted to do that with some students. And we're going to do at least a few in 2023. I feel like that's a promise made that I want to keep. It's easier now. It's not all on me and tapping into students I have at all these campuses. I can tap Julia and I can say, hey, Julia, who do you have at Brown? Vince, you got anybody at Brown? You know, Susan, got anyone? We can tap into everybody's pool and pull together a panel for you. And so something I want to do, not going to do it until we get YCBK Plus launched. So this will not be a 2022 thing. We're looking at 2023. But we have more manpower now. And it's something that I said we were going to do, and I want us to do it. Now, I must admit, I didn't realize College-Yvonne had done such a good job at doing something similar. I knew they had some panels, but I didn't know how good they were. So that's what caused me to step back. But still, in the moment, you could have your questions asked live to a school of interest. So I really want to do that. I just want to let you know I haven't forgot about that. And I'm not going to promise how many we'll do. I'm just going to say we're going to do it in 2023. We just have to get YCBK Plus launched. Okay, another announcement. So we've heard from a couple of you that say, love the interviews with the leaders you're having. But I kind of miss the old style spotlight, Mark, where you or Lisa would do a deep dive into a college. And I just want you to know that we do hear you. And we are going to be resurrecting that, not on a weekly basis. We'll do it when we don't have an admissions leader doing a spotlight for us. But I know that we do hear you. And there's some people that have had spotlight requests out for a really long time. I'm looking at the list. Some schools, for example, like Vassar, Swarthmore, I mean, these requests have been in for a while. And I just want to let you know that we'll be returning to that. The final announcement before I do my preview has to do with our college counselor group that we literally launched right out of this podcast. I mean, the history for that was when we had those webinars with Middlebury and with Richmond and University of California at Santa Barbara. 40% of the attendees were college counselors. I also noticed how many of our questions come in from college counselors, how many of our donations come in from college counselors. And I was like, wow, we have a real college counseling community here. So why don't we form a group, which we did. And, we meet every 6 months, usually in February and in August for 75 minutes. And we talk about issues related to the field and the profession. And it's really rich. We've had 3 of these now, every 6 months. And we're scheduled to do it again in either late January or early February. And we've got a fantastic group of about 25 of us. I just want to share that we still are missing a few slots. And if you're a listener and you fit this description, then please reach out. And once again, I would appreciate it at YCBK podcast. You'll reach me directly that way. But if you don't have Twitter, you could also do questions@yourcollegeboundkid.com. And so the vision for this group is that we will have about 7 to 10 people in 4 categories. So independent educational consultants, right now we do have that number there. So we're kind of at max capacity there. The other areas are CBO counselors, community-based organization counselors. We could use a couple there. School-based counselors, independent school-based counselors that work at an independent school and you're doing college counseling. We could use a couple more slots there. And then the other is public school. You're a public school college counselor. I'm talking about you do college counseling, not so much guidance counseling, but college counseling. And so we could use about 1 or 2 slots there. And that's the vision, 7 to 10 in each category. We would like to have some counselors that work on international admissions. And we have 2 people there right now. We could use 1 more in that bucket. So if you fit any of those descriptions and you want to be a part of our group, it's a low commitment gig. It's 75 minutes of your time every 6 months. Other than that, all you're really doing is responding to a survey to ask us what you want us to cover this month. And that's pretty much it. So let's say less than 90 minutes every 6 months. Then low commitment, high impact. We're all really enjoying it in there. If you fit one of our needs, we'd love to have you. And if you are an independent educational consultant and you really want to be a part of this, please let us know because we may still have an opportunity to get you in a rotation in the not too distant future. So we'd still like to hear from you if you're fit in that bucket and you have interest in this.
And now this week's interview with a special guest.
Okay, friends, we are transitioning to a new interview, and I was a little lengthy in my announcements today, so I'm not going to go too in-depth on it other than to say it's with Tom Becker. He's from the University of Pittsburgh. He's wore a number of hats there, and Susan and I do a joint interview together. It's a 90-minute interview. It's a 3-parter. It'll run over the next 3 Mondays. Listen and enjoy. Friends, I'm here with Tom Becker from the University of Pittsburgh and Susan Tree, one of our co-hosts from Your College-Bound Kid. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Mark and Tom. Nice to see you both.
Good to be here. Well, we're excited to have both of you. I know Susan's mom was from Pittsburgh and has been at the university multiple times. And Tom, you've got a pretty interesting story. So why don't you start us off and give us background information? We certainly want to hear about any admission roles you've had, but anything else you feel like sharing it as well, just whatever you feel makes sense to give our audience a little bit of understanding of your background.
Yeah. And so, I've never had the intention of starting as an admissions counselor in the admissions world. I think that's sort of a trend with admissions people in that my undergraduate was sociology and criminal justice. And then I became a tour guide at my undergraduate and sort of fell in love with it. My first job was in financial aid at a community college in the community college setting, and then moved to an AAU institution in the Midwest, more of a land grant institution, and started as an admissions counselor and had a territory of Chicago and Kansas City and big part of Iowa. And then sort of progressed up through and worked with our big events, and then worked with national scholars, so national merit, national achievement scholars, and then director of recruitment. In that role, we created regional representatives, a couple of them for the institutions. And then one day, my wife came in and said, "Hey, I'm moving to Texas. Would you like to join me?" And I said, "Sure." And so to support her job and her career, I was fortunate enough that that institution created a regional position for me in Texas. And then about 7 years ago, the University of Pittsburgh wanted to start the regional model. And I went to campus to sort of consult for them. And they said, "Hey, why don't you take this role?" And it felt good. It felt really good. And so now here in December, I moved from Texas to Pittsburgh. And so I'm now based in Pittsburgh. And we moved from 3 regionals to 11 regionals. And I manage that staff. In between all of that, I was fortunate to be the president of a statewide Association for College Admissions Counseling. I've been very, very active at times within the assembly. Our ethics, our principles of good practice at the time, been involved in those conversations, helped start a regional, the Dallas Admissions Regional Network. And so just like to give back to the community that I'm in. And that's how I've done it. And people have given me the freedom to be able to not only do my work for the institution, but also at a state and local level as well.
And I'll throw in something which I'm sure we'll touch on later, that Tom also is a parent of 2 Pitt graduates.
Yes. And we can talk about that, having a guy that's at the time when my children were going through the college search process, 20, 25 years into it. And I was a parent, and all of this experience sort of dwindles away, and the emotions run up in this process. And kind of fun seeing it from that side, and then making sure that staff, how do you make staff aware of that? Millennials and Gen Zers that you're supervising, and the parents and the student driving this process, yet having the parent involvement as well, right? And so one of the reasons I stay in college admissions is because this usually is the first sort of major decision that many students make. And let's help them. Let's help them and teach them how to make important decisions and when to make important decisions, and walk them through this emotion and get to some tangible, but also sort of respect that intuition, respect that sort of gut feeling, that spider sense that's telling you, this is my right place. We talk about this fit in our business a lot. And so that's why I stay. It's fun. It really, really is. And the students we work with, we're in the United States of America, 3,000 colleges and universities out there. Lots of choice, lots of options. It is absolutely a strength. Also, absolutely a weakness. Where do I start? Where do I start? How do I decide? Who's my trusted source? It's again, job security, maybe that's what it is.
Well, I think you teed up a first question nicely. And so who is Pitt and why attend Pitt? How would you answer that one, Tom?
I think Pitt is in a very unique spot in that you're in the city of Pittsburgh, has all the amenities of a much, much larger city, the professional sports teams, the museums, the cultural district, the 89 different or 90 neighborhoods that are all unique and different. Yet we all come together for Pitt in Pittsburgh. And so students can actually go to those events. They can actually afford to go to those events. It's encouraged to go to those events. And so Pitt is this city that has a huge emphasis on education. You know, we're flanked by 2 other universities. We're in the Oakland neighborhood. Students will spend the vast majority of their time in that Oakland neighborhood because of that sort of student feel, and centeredness and energy. Yet when a family visits for the first time, they'll be like, "Where's the university? Where's Pitt?" And then they go on the tour and they're like, "Oh, I see the boundaries. I can throw a rock from Pitt property and hit the Carnegie Art Museum and Natural History Museum, and I don't have a good arm, right? I'm a 5-minute walk to the Schenley Park. It's sort of like the Central Park of Pittsburgh. Ice arena, golf, single track, mountain biking, hiking. It's just this unique setting, but it also, Pitt's a major research institution. Before COVID hit, we were just about to go over $1 billion a year in outside research funding.
Wow.
But Pitt is very, very much committed to having undergraduates see that, feel it, get involved with that. Sometimes it's at the highest level. You know, our vaccine Center for Vaccines, the polio vaccine was discovered at Pitt. And actually my former boss, her grandmother worked with Jonas Salk in that lab.
No way.
Incredible. But Secretary Blinken was on campus this last month or two at the vaccine center talking about what do we need to do to prepare for the future so that we don't get into this, hopefully, cross the fingers, this sort of situation that we're in now. And so at the highest level, to just that first year experience as a freshman, where you're just starting to get into that research. So students that are attracted to Pitt tend to want to get at that. Yep. They tend to be students that are driven. They many times this is their first degree. They're going to go get a medical degree, physical therapy, occupation, dentistry, law, MBA, sort of all on our campus, right? And so they're serious, but they enjoy going to the football games. They enjoy taking the free bus pass and the city being their campus and the city sort of embracing that, because the city of Pittsburgh was a dying city. The steel industry left. And so there's this sense of something significant occurred in the city and something continues to be significant in the city. But we still build things, we still manufacture things, but it's now we talk about eds, meds, and tech, right? Education, medicine, and technology. There's 6 teaching hospitals basically within walking distance of the university. You have a University of Pittsburgh Medical Center just announced a $1.5 billion with a B new teaching hospital, literally across the street from Litchfield Towers, which is where most of our freshmen will live their freshman year, in the School of Public Health across the street. And so I think that why Pitt is that you want to be in a city. You want to be engage those amenities, which we allow. The student ID gets students into any of the museums within the city of Pittsburgh just for free. My daughter would go to the Carnegie Art Museum when she was stressed and sit in front of a Monet original and just get centered, right? And where can you do that? You can do that at Pitt. And people coming, the people are incredible. It's sort of East Coast go meets Midwest nice, because we're in Western Pennsylvania. And so people will look you in the eye and tell you what they think, and follow up on what they say. And that's pretty cool. That's pretty neat.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because when, right now Pitt is sitting kind of in an interesting niche that is very, very popular. And Mark and I, as college counselors, we all laugh, because when high school juniors start talking about their college search, probably 3/4 of them say, mid-size research university, strong in STEM and business, in an urban neighborhood, but with a nice campus.
Yeah.
And that's a niche that somehow has elevated itself. Back when I was looking at colleges, everybody wanted small liberal arts, non-urban, teachers in your face kind of thing. So the pendulum really did swing the other way. And I think it's our job as college counselors to kind of open the door to kids away from, whether it's Boston, New York, DC, which is kind of all they might know, no matter whether they live in Dallas or, wherever. That's what they think the East Coast is. But, one of the things I've started doing with students is trying to figure out how to help them differentiate among similar institutions, especially during the pandemic, when kids were not on the road, they were not visiting, and they were dealing with the beginnings of video, visits, which were pretty bad at the beginning. They got amazingly better. They're pretty darn great now. But what I started doing was directing kids to the mission statement, which is like a deadly thing to say to a teenager. So I don't use the word read about the history of the school, because as far as they're concerned, that's dead. But I say, so when you read the mission statement on the website, because they would never go there on their own, write down the words that the institution uses to describe itself. Write them down. And then as you research different schools, start thinking about these descriptors and what these schools have in common, but look for the words that they're using to distinguish themselves. So that's what you do when you read an application from a high school student, right? You say, wow, a lot in common with all the other kids who are applying. What's different about this young person? So I went to the Pitt mission statement. I'm not going to ask you to recite it by heart.
Oh, thank you.
I promise.
I appreciate that.
Although, the log line, which I always look for, because there's usually one in a college's mission statement, is progress comes from never standing still.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that spoke to me in a way. I don't know what it would say to a teenager, but as I read through the mission statement, what do you think what are the salient points in that that prospective families should hearken to?
Yeah, the thing that I would focus in something that when I was looking, right, or considering working for Pitt, this concept of creating new knowledge for society, right, for the betterment of society, and that is absolutely real. That is, I see our students through our Pitt Serves as freshmen getting involved right away in the community, and it expands wide, right? Yes, it starts first with Pitt in the University of Pittsburgh, but then it goes to the city, Western PA, the nation, the world, and you'll see how much the resources that we provide our students to really be able to practice that as undergraduates. So when they get to the real world, some of these really challenging discussions or which direction to go, right? There's no right or wrong answer to some of that, but you have to try. And I like to tell students, the city of Pittsburgh at one time had more nonprofits per capita than anywhere else in the world. Some of that is the steel and energy business in Western PA at the turn of the century.
Wow.
And our students absolutely get involved in that. We have a sandbox. We have this sandbox, and there's not one or two trucks in the sandbox. We got trucks, we got diggers, we got tools, we got the whole spectrum. And our students want to impact the world. And I think that mission statement, that's what draws out from me. And when I'm reading an application, that's something that I personally, because the way we review, and then we'll probably get into that a little bit more, is very individualized. And so I can provide, things like, one of our recent graduates was a CNN hero, right? One of their national heroes. He was up for that award.
Wow.
And as an undergraduate, he was able to get a fellowship that allowed him to go to Sri Lanka and soap and bathing and taking hotel discarded soaps and providing an industry to be able to use that soap and then give it back to community, to under-resourced, really the poor of the poor because they were bathing their children with harsh chemicals, right? From that massive, whoa, this person is truly changing the world, to working with the therapy dogs that come to the Cathedral of Learning every Thursday, and making paper blankets for them, right?
Oh.
And so it usually starts small, and we build and we build and we build, and we provide the resources and the support and the mentoring to allow for that. My just personal sort of experiences, right, with two children that have gone through it, and being able, that the university does not pick sides politically, right, or but we very much try to teach our students, how do you speak your truth to power in a way that isn't sort of coming together and combating, but finding solutions, right? And that can be really, really hard. But Vice Provost Bonner, who's in charge of our student affairs apparatus, just does a wonderful, wonderful way of walking students and families, because we'll have controversial speakers on campus about things that they believe, and we'll get families that come in and don't believe in those things, and talking them and walking them through how this is how we educate people.
Right.
Critical thinking skills, communication skills. How do you come closer? So I'm going off on a tangent. I know I'm going off on a tangent, but I think that comes back to this idea of helping society and moving society through change, which can be challenging. Can be challenging at times.
Do you think some of that is rooted in the fact that while a private institution, the university was founded with a public mission and has been funded in ways and supported by the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania? I mean, it's a private institution with a public mission. How would you describe that?
Yeah, we're a state-related institution, which means that up until the 1960s, the University of Pittsburgh was a private institution.
Right.
When we joined as a state-related institution, those dollars that come from the Commonwealth go directly towards reducing the difference between out-of-state and in-state tuition. And that is unique. That is different. But we very much, I think we get about $150 million a year from the state legislature. And we put, I think it's $4.3 billion every year that we parlay that into economic vitality for Western Pennsylvania, the nation, the world. And so that mission of serving the Commonwealth and the citizens of Pennsylvania is absolutely there, but it is larger than that. And we get this question all the time about your state related, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so is there a difference between when you review a Pennsylvania student versus a student from out of state? And we reserved the right when we came into the state related system to admit the very best candidates.
Right.
So we don't have a criteria. And again, I was in Texas, right, where the state legislature, a certain percentage of their class has to be from the state, and we don't have any of that. And so, again, sorry, I took us on a little bit of a tangent, but I think that's for your parents and students that will be listening. That is a unique thing related to Pitt that you won't find at some other places.
That's right.
And
the differential is experienced in tuition. Is that right?
Correct. And so, yeah, that $150 million a year is probably $10,000, $15,000
Wow.
a year per student, right? And so it's significant, and it helps.
So, Tom, I concur 100% with Susan. We have so many students that want to be in cities, that want to be in places with strong STEM, that want to be in mid-size, mid to large. One of the things that often differentiates schools are particular programs that there's strength in. Pitt is well known for exceptional health-related college majors, and love to hear you talk about that. But what are some other programs majors that you feel are exceptional, but maybe they fly under the radar and perhaps they don't have the national notoriety, but boy, are we ever good at this? Yeah.
The couple that come to mind sort of right away is that film studies.
Oh.
I challenge people that are listening to go just Google films made in Pittsburgh. Right. And you will see a very, very impressive list. And our students are heavily, heavily involved in all of the activities. We have an individual that works in our office that worked for an organization at one time that found extras for all these movies. There's another woman that she says, "Hey, Tom, go to this movie, stop it at this part, and you'll see me right behind Top Gun.
Tom Cruise.
Tom Cruise. I'll be right behind Tom Cruise, and you'll be able to see me, right?" And this summer, Tom Hanks was photobombing wedding parties in the city of Pittsburgh because he was in the city filming a movie, and you'll see the script writing by our faculty, and so the English department is truly one of the oldest, broadest, deepest programs out there in the nation, and they do a remarkable job. And so those would be two. I like the art history, and this is just Tom and I and the way my mind works. We have students that are working with, again, across the street from the Carnegie Art Museum, and they're working with restoration, and they're working with curation, and there are more dinosaur bones in that facility than any other facility in the Western Hemisphere besides the museum in Mexico City, right? So it's second most. And so, and our students are working with that. Our students get their hands on those things. And so that, and then for a large university, 30,000 students, 19,000 undergraduates, it's something like 90+% of arts and sciences students, which is the vast majority of those students, are majoring in more than just one thing. They're majoring and minoring, majoring certificates, minoring certificates. 30% of them are triple majoring.
Wow.
And so in triple or double, mostly double, but some of them will triple, right?
Okay.
Pull that together.
Uh-huh.
And so So students may come in thinking, I know I want to be in finance or marketing. And then they parlay that with a double degree in psychology because of that connection with marketing, right? Or they maybe they do economics and they do a minor in business. We allow them that flexibility truly to explore, and I think that we do that remarkably well. There is one exception: nursing. Nursing is it's a direct entry program. You have to know.
Right.
And transferring in or doing an internal transfer to nursing is really, really hard. It can happen, but it's like onesie twosies. And so you just have to know. But everything else, computing, public health, business, engineering, we really try to break down those barriers as much as we can with accreditation purposes to allow students to explore so they can do an art history. So they can have we teach 30 languages at Pitt.
Wow.
Right? The language department. I go over to the global hub in Pasvar, and I just walk by that and I'm like, oh, this is so cool.
Okay, can you name them, Tom?
All 30 of them? No,
No.
especially the less commonly
of course.
languages,
of course.
right? There's an entire sort of subsection within that is
right.
related to that. So those would be the things.
Friends, this concludes the first part of our 3-part interview. I hope you'll join us next week for part 2 of 3. On Thursday's episode, Dave is back from treating his wife to a big birthday bash celebration as they headed to Europe. And we've got a very exciting article. It's called The Right Play by Kyle Mullins, and it's from the Dartmouth, which is their school newspaper. And I have to give a shout out to Luna. Luna's one of our really dedicated listeners, and she sends me so many amazing articles. And this is one she sent us, and we picked it up. We've got probably 1 or 2 more in the kitty that she sent us that we're going to be discussing. Our question from a listener, we're going back to a student at Stuyvesant High School in New York, sent in a couple questions that we're going to take over the next couple of weeks that have to do with interviews. And her question is, if I'm in an interview and a school says, what is your greatest weakness? How do I answer that question? And then our college spotlight, it'll be part 2, final part of my interview with Robert Alexander, the Dean of Admission, Financial Aid, and Enrollment Management at the University of Rochester. And Robert, of course, will be helping us to understand the University of Rochester. And our college spotlight will be, you've guessed it, the University of Rochester with Robert Alexander. Friends, just remember, it's not where you go. It's not where you go. It's not where you go. But it's what you do when you get there for those 4 years, hopefully not 5 or 6. But if it's 5 or 6, for those 5 or 6 years. And it's what you do when you get out of there for the remainder of the hopefully 60 years that you'll live or so. That's what's going to determine your career success and your career trajectory. See you next week, everybody. And that's our show. A big thank you to you, our listeners, for tuning in this week. If you find this podcast helpful, please follow us and you'll get every single episode as soon as it is released. If you're interested, there are a few ways you can really support our podcast. You can click the share button and send it to your friends and acquaintances. You can help us pay our staff and our expenses by donating on our website. You can write a review for us on Apple or Spotify. I'm the producer of the podcast, but we have a fantastic team of 14. Shout out to our co-host, Dr. Lisa Ruff, Dr. David Williams, Susan Tree, Vince Garcia, and Julia Esquivel. And to our substitute co-host, Sylvia Borgo. Our sensational sound engineer is Nemanja Motvich. Our amazing music is from Victor Allen Weeks. Marketing designs are from Kimberly Blass. Lily Parikh manages our Instagram. Our image editor is Talha Khan. Joy Stucker does our website episode updates. And our webmaster is Stelianos Dimitru. If you want to have a coaching session with Lisa or me, just text me at 404-664-4340. If you have a question you want us to answer, or if you have a recommended resource or article you think we should discuss, just send it to questions@yourcollegeboundkid.com. By the way, check out our website, where you'll find lots of content that is not on any podcast app. Our website is yourcollegeboundkid.com. If you want to learn about other hot admissions topics, follow us on Twitter at YCBK Podcast. We think of you as our listening family, and we look forward to meeting again with you every single Thursday.